Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to America once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel once before. Now, the last time I reviewed a beer involving this brewery was maybe a couple of years ago, 2021, 2022, something like that, but this will be my first solo brewery beer review involving this brewery. Now, if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say they're probably best known for their different kinds of big, malty, Imperial stouts, barley wines and stuff like this. They're known for their barrel program over here in Europe, but they do a whole host of other styles as well from what I understand. So I think this is one of the breweries that I really need to go and visit on site, make an out and about video, and then I'll have a proper impression of what these guys are all about. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I've heard these guys can do very, very well. It's also got a little bit of age on it, which I think could make it very interesting. And this is one of the last beers that I bought from a friend's bottle shop here in Hong Kong that has now unfortunately died. So yeah, quite a cool review in that regard as well. But needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. I've heard very good things about it, so hopefully it's another good one. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to the American West Coast. We're going to go to the state of California and to a little place called Anaheim, just outside of Los Angeles. And that means that we're going to have a look at my first solo brewery beer from Bottle Logic Brewing. So this particular beer is called More Time to Explain. It comes in at 12.43% ABV, very specific of course, and they're describing this one as a breakfast stout, or as they're putting on the label here, an Imperial stout brewed with lactose, aged in bourbon barrels, and then finished with blueberries and maple syrup. So yeah, I think this one will be pretty damn nice actually. So yeah, this is a beer that I got at Cave Beer up in Mei Fu in Kowloon here in Hong Kong, and yeah, my friend Kenneth actually kept this one aside for me, so a big thank you to him for making this review possible. But my first encounter with Bottle Logic Brewing was when they did a collaboration with Brewski from Helsingborg in Skåne back over in Sweden, and that was a really interesting beer actually. So ever since I tried that one, I really wanted to try one of Bottle Logic's own beers and see what they were all about, because a lot of people have been raving about the Imperial stouts that these guys do. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's all about. The More Time to Explain, 12.43% ABV Imperial breakfast stout as they're calling it, from Bottle Logic in Anaheim, California. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I'll do from Bottle Logic Brewing. Very first time I'm doing a solo brewery beer review from these guys, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the American playlist along with a number of other things, and that's being added to quite regularly, of course. So keep your eyes peeled on that, because we do get a good selection of American beer here in Hong Kong, and make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, to tell you a little bit about Bottle Logic Brewing then. So, as I mentioned to you already, Bottle Logic Brewing are based in Anaheim in Orange County near Los Angeles in California on the American West Coast. California, of course, is kind of the birthplace of American craft beer, but this brewery opened back in February of 2014, and it was founded by Wes Parker, Steve Napolitano, and Brandon Buckner. And all three of these guys are Anaheim locals. And Brandon had been a personal trainer while Wes worked in IT and Steve worked in the legal sector. So the guys had been friends for a long time, and they got into home brewing and then later decided to quit what they called their good jobs and make their own brewery, which they began planning in 2013. So today, Wes is the head brewer, Brandon deals with the sales and marketing side of the brewery, and Steve is the CEO. And over the last few years, they've been working to increase their capacity and produce new beers. They've got 4 ranges of beer, which includes their core range. They've got their cold classics, which are traditional beers, the Proto series, which are the experimental ones. I think this one might be a Proto series beer. And then they've also got the Hoptomatron series, which are their limited editions and things. This one could actually be one of those as well. We'll need to see. The label has a lot of stuff going on it, as you can see. But in 2018, they built a larger brewery next to the original building to increase their capacity, and this new facility also houses a restaurant and tap room as well, which always seems to have a really interesting list of stuff. But over the years, they've continued to expand their brewing capacity and their barrel program, which has become very, very well respected, and they've been getting their beer out there across the world a little bit more as well. But as of July 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 590 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And as I mentioned to you, at least for Europeans that will come across this brewery, they are best known for their different kinds of Imperial stouts, big barley wines and stuff like this. But I think it's mainly Imperial stouts that have kind of propelled these guys to being quite famous. Although they do a bunch of IPAs, they do lagers and stuff like this. You can go and have a look at their tap list and just see what they have on. But a very well respected name in the Californian beer scene these days, and a brewery that you definitely need to check out if you get the chance. Hopefully I can get over there and visit these guys and do an out and about video at some point. I would love to go to California and just explore a little bit more. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about these guys. As I say, 590 beers as of July 2024 when we're filming this one for you. I think the last time this brewery featured on the channel might have been like 2020 or 2021, something like that, potentially even earlier. So yeah, if you want to learn more about this brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of those different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's go on and have a wee look at the beer itself. So you can see the artwork on the label here is quite busy, I would say. So yeah, that's the little bit I read out to you earlier about the actual style of the beer. And it says, where we're going, we don't need roads. Oh, I nearly dropped that there. And you can also see the reference with this one. This is obviously a reference to Back to the Future. So you can see the DeLorean on the side there, which I think is pretty cool. I think I'll need to keep this bottle in all honesty. And then you've also got the alcohol meter on this one as well, which shows you that it's a little bit above 12.5% ABV. And this is from their advanced barrel aging program, of course, too. So yeah, I think we will need to keep the bottle of this one. But yeah, nice bottle cap as well, I have to say. Don't have a Bottle Logic one ready, but you can see that comes across very, very nicely. But yeah, 500 milliliters this one, which is quite an unusual measurement when it comes to American breweries. They're calling it 1 pint and 0.9 fluid ounces here. This is batch number 1, and this was also the 2021 release of this beer, because there is a 2023 version as well. But an Imperial Stout brewed with lactose, aged in bourbon barrels, and then finished with blueberries and maple syrup. This should be very, very nice. Part of the Stasis project, it says on the top here as well. Yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what it's all about. I'm really excited to try this one. I've been eyeing this beer up for quite a wee while. So yeah, nice little bit of smoke on the opening there. Seems to be a little bit of salt or something underneath the base there, something like that. Smells very sugary though. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see what we have. Oh, look at that. That is crazy. This reminds me of my first encounters with Omnipollo and things back in Sweden. Just look at the thickness of that as it pours. And I think we've got the majority of this one out into the glass just now. There's quite a little bit of sediment at the bottom of this bottle as well, actually. But if I sugar it up, yeah, even when I sugar it up, I can't see the bottom of the bottle there. That is crazy actually. So yeah, let me just get it into position where you can see that. I think that's quite nice. So yeah, you can see that this beer poured, we got about 80% of it I think out and into the glass, but you can see this beer poured with a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of dark tan head. It looks very, very nice. That head is fading away, of course, to be a very thin foamy layer now, and you're just going to get that ring around the edge of the glass. But I'll just bring it forward and let you have a wee look at that. That does look very, very nice. Yeah, don't know why it's not focusing on that. It's a bit annoying. But yeah, as you can see, this beer's poured this lovely dark ebony rosewood colour, which is what you'd expect from an Imperial Stout, of course. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker coloured beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But when it comes to black beers such as Imperial Stouts, it really is very, very difficult to change the colour of these beers with any adjuncts. The only time I've ever seen it done was by an Estonian brewery when they put beets in the beer, and the thing had this kind of purple tinge to it, which was a bit crazy, to be honest with you. And that might have been a porter rather than a stout. But yeah, there's a few ways you can play with Imperial Stouts as well. You know, you can do barrel aging, where you sacrifice a bit of the mouthfeel to get all of these infused flavours and things like that. You can do a double mash, which is going to give you a big sticky mouthfeel. You can also do a longer wort boil, which is going to give you some really nice big leathery brown sugary characters to the beer. So these are all the things you should think about when you do Imperial Stouts. The other thing, of course, is to add the adjuncts into them, which has been done a little bit with this one. But yeah, not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this beer, just one or two big bubbles going up toward the bottom of the head there. But yeah, let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then and see how things progress. So I'm really curious about this. Oh, that's ridiculous. This is really interesting. It really does remind me, you know, and everyone has a different point of reference with beer, but this really reminds me of some of the first Imperial Stouts that I tried from Omnipoil in Stockholm back in the day. And of course they were brewing their beers down at the Proefbrouwerij in La Christiehoefde near Ghent in Belgium. But this is like a little bit of nostalgia for me, actually. But yeah, you can smell with this one, it's got the big sharp juicy blueberries coming out of it. But then of course you've got all the big sticky kind of brown sugary characters coming out of this. I just see on the side here they've got food pairings. They've got pecorino siciliano, waffles and candied bacon. That would work with this for sure. And pecan shortbread. It seems very fancy. But yeah, the aroma out of this one is awesome. This is pretty incredible, actually. Hell of a lot of brown sugar, big oily thick like American maple syrup. Canadian maple syrup, I should say. Maple syrup is Canadian. That big sweet brown sugary sort of thing. It's, you know, like a diabetic's dream or nightmare, whatever perspective you take this one. It's so sweet, this beer. It's just it's incredible, this. So let's just try and break the aroma of this beer down and try and describe a little bit what's going on. So let's see what we can do, because it's quite intense, it really is, and everything just kind of blends together in this one, and you'll see that if you try this for yourself. So obviously, the thing that's going to saturate your nose first with this beer is the blueberry. It's got a really quite sharp juiciness and tartness to it, which I think is very, very interesting. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I find, is really, really nice. So yeah, lovely big sharp blueberry character coming out of this one. And yeah, it's underneath that you start to get everything else. So once you get past the kind of initial saturation that your nose will feel from the blueberries, you start to get all the other complexities out of this beer. You can smell the lovely kind of smooth American oak in there, which forms the backbone. So yeah, lovely smooth American oak in this one. There's a little bit of vanilla, of course. You know, American oak has that lovely smoothness, but also a wee bit of vanilla character. And then yeah, you've got the big sort of bourbon brown sugary characters in this one. As I've said before, Scotch whiskey tends to be a lot smoother, I think, than the American bourbons, which just have that little bit more bite to them, but they also have quite a little bit more sweetness, I would say, the bourbons too. So yeah, maybe the Scotch whiskies are a little bit smoother and drier in their sweetness. I think that's probably fair. But yeah, above all of that, you start to actually get the kind of malty side of the beer coming out. So let's focus on that malty aspect of the beer. So for me, you can smell a little touch of like roasty toasty, well fired bread crust in this one, but I think that's kind of overpowered by the sweetness of this beer. That really is quite minimal. So there's definitely some kind of sweet rye bread in there. A little bit of wholemeal brown bread, but not too much. There's a lot of cakiness to this one as well. It really reminds me of like a Christmas pudding, you know, that big sort of brandy, sherry soaked, oily Christmas pudding, cakey character that comes out of the beer, that comes out of a number of these beers. So there's a lot of that going on in this one. Yeah, I think the way that all of that goes together is really, really very, very nice. So yeah, you've got that, let's say, rye bread, wholemeal brown bread, big sort of Christmas puddingy, cakey type note, and there's quite a little bit of like, you know, soft American chocolate brownie in this one as well. A lot of that going on, which I think is very, very nice. One or two little nutty elements in there as well. And on top of that, you've got the big brown sugary notes in there. So, you know, you can smell an almost maple syrupy type quality out of this one. Did this beer actually have maple syrup? Oh yeah, it does, yeah, makes sense. Brain fart there. So yeah, it does actually have the maple syrup, which is very distinctive because it's got that very bright character to it. But yeah, beyond that, you are getting straight up caramel. There's a lot of treacle, molasses as the Americans call it on this one, you know, that highly caramelized brown sugar. But I'm not getting too much in the way of leatheriness with this brown sugar. The impression that I have of this beer is very much that it's double mash, it's been barrel aged of course as well, and you've got these adjuncts added into it. I'm curious as to whether they're using the actual adjuncts or whether they're using flavour essence, because I know a lot of breweries like to use flavour essence because it's better for the kind of chemistry and things like that of the beer, and it's, you get the flavour a bit more kind of evenly spread if you like. So yeah, the blueberry notes that I'm getting out of this one make me wonder if it is flavour essence that's been used in the beer, because it reminds me of a little bit of the Omnipollo ones, which I know use flavour essence. But yeah, I think we've covered everything we need to say about the kind of malty side of this beer, to be honest with you, at this stage, and the barrel as well. In the back of the nose, you do get a little bit more of that kind of cakey, Christmas puddingy note, which is obviously going to be to do with the yeast. But the, yeah, the way everything else goes together in this beer is really, really nice. On the hoppy side of things, you've got a little bit of, there's not too much hoppy character in this beer. You have to remember that Imperial Stouts are not the most hop-forward styles of beer in the first place. But yeah, you do still get a little bit of green component out of this one. There's a little bit of earthiness in there. There's a little touch of a kind of herbal character as well. And yeah, a little bit of earthiness, a little bit of herbal character, quite a little bit of floral aromaticity, I would say too, and some grassiness there, which is surprising when you consider this beer is from 2021. And then yeah, you have quite a little bit of fruity character to this as well. So let's just look at those fruity notes to round off the aroma of this beer. So for me, there's a nice little bit of there's a nice little bit of kind of sharp raisiny character to this one. Big juicy plums as well. Yeah, big juicy plums in this one. A little bit of prune, quite a lot of date as well, I would say. So I'm getting, yeah, figs, prunes, dates. But yeah, a lot of black currant, quite a bit of blackberry, and of course you've got the kind of sharper, juicier blueberry coming out of this one as well. So yeah, the way the aroma of this beer goes together, I think, is really, really nice. Yeah, incredible stuff, this one. The aroma, that's one of the most intense aromas I think I've come across on the channel in quite a wee while, and I'm glad that I've got somebody to share this beer with, because I think, you know, this thing would probably send me over the edge if I tried to drink it all myself. So, and that would be selfish as well, to be honest with you, considering how good this beer probably is going to be. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of this beer before you get stuck into it. This one is the More Time to Explain, a 12.43% Imperial Breakfast Stout, as they're calling it. This one's been aged in bourbon barrels. It's got blueberries and maple syrup added into it, and it comes from Bottle Logic Brewing in Anaheim in California in the US. 2021 vintage too. I don't know if I said that, but let's get stuck into this one and see what it's all about. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Ooh. That is very, very nice. Yeah, it's, when I think about this one, as I've said in many videos before, for me it's very difficult to beat the mouthfeel that you'll get in it's very difficult to beat the mouthfeel that you'll find in Nordic Imperial stouts, because those are just so thick. But I get the impression that this one, if it hadn't been barrel aged, the level of thickness that you get out of this would have been almost on that level. But it's so smooth, this one. It's a big, oily, slick beast of a beer, this. It's absolutely lovely. I think this is very, very nicely done. So I'm just going to say straight away, a big thumbs up to Bottle Logic. This is potentially the closest American Imperial Stout that I've come across that matches the mouthfeel of the Nordic ones. It seems to be something like in the Nordic countries, they just love these big, thick Imperial Stouts. But this is great. If you do get the chance to try this one, you will enjoy it, absolutely. So yeah, let's just break this beer down then and describe it a wee more in depth. But it's got everything you could want of a breakfast stout. You've got the nice dry smoothness and sweetness in there, a little bit of the brown. The brown sugar, of course, is quite big. The fruitiness, it gives you everything. But yeah, let's look at the middle third of your palate then to start off. So the backbone of the beer, you have that lovely kind of smooth American oaky character in there. It's got a wee bit of dryness to it as well. Remember, sweeter flavours come out further forward on your palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So you can feel the bourbon oak, the American oak there further back is a little bit drier, but it's a little bit smoother the further forward you go. You get that nice little bit of vanilla in there as well, but then you have the bourbon layer just sitting above that, and it's a slightly more toasty and bright bourbon that's coming out of this beer. I would definitely say that. So yeah, the way that everything kind of pieces together in this one, I think, is very, very nice. On top of that bourbon layer, of course, you start to get the actual stout side of things. So you can feel there is a roasty, toasty, kind of well-fired black malt sitting in the base of the beer. But because of the level of sweetness that you have everywhere else in the beer, it feels like that is kind of suppressed a little bit. So on top of that, you do get a layer of kind of rye bread in there. You can feel that sort of sweet but slightly dry rye bready character. Then you get a wholemeal bready note above that, and within these bready layers you can pick up a little bit of nuttiness. And I would say that above that you have this quite dense sort of chocolate sponge cake out of this one. And the aroma, I was getting a lot of like, Christmas pudding, chocolate brownie, this kind of thing. But I would say in the actual flavour, it is a little bit more like a kind of drier chocolate sponge, particularly into the aftertaste. Quite a milky chocolate sponge, I would say too. But yeah, above all of that, you have, above the kind of chocolate sponge layer, you have the more dense, I would say you've got the more dense kind of chocolate brownie and like Christmas puddingy type notes coming out of the beer, and those are really interesting. So yeah, I would say, yeah, you've probably got more of a kind of Christmas puddingy layer on the top, then more like a chocolate brownie kind of layer sitting above that, on top of all the cakey character. Yeah, Christmas pudding with all the infused Christmas all the confused, infused, not confused. It's me that's confused now that I've said that. Yeah, you're getting the more brandy, sherry soaked Christmas pudding, then the chocolate brownie, and then above that it's the cocoa nibs. So at the back of at the back of that middle third of your palate, you've got the you can feel above all of that, you get the sort of chocolatey layer of the beer. So there's a wee bit of like a slightly charred chocolatey note out of this one, you know, maybe 80-90% cocoa chocolate. But yeah, as you move further forward, there is a little bit more of you can feel that the chocolate kind of mellows out, so it becomes more of like a 40-50% cocoa chocolate actually, which I find quite interesting. Yeah, so the way all of that pieces together, I think, is really, really nice. The chocolate layer in this beer is good as well, and I think that lingers into the sweetness a little bit. You maybe even get 30-40% cocoa chocolate at the front of that middle third of your palate, but yeah, above that you get the brown sugary layers coming out of the beer, and I do wonder. I wonder if this beer has had a slightly longer wort boil to it. So the base of the brown sugar layer is this nice big leathery brown sugar, and it's above that you start to get, you can feel there's a layer of a kind of straight up sweet caramel in there, and in the very dead center of your palate you've got that treacle molasses type note. But emanating from these brown sugars, you have emanating from all these brown sugars, you've got that nice kind of nutty character coming out of the beer as well. So yeah. Yeah, the way that all of that goes together is lovely in this one. And of course the thing is, because you've got the blueberries in here, you can feel all of that, but the maple syrup, of course, the brightness of the maple syrup within those brown sugar layers kind of pops up a little bit later on too. So you can see the maple syrup and the blueberries just kind of doing their thing on top of that. But I think at that we've covered everything in the middle third of your palate with this beer, and that's where the overall complexity of this beer really lies. So yeah, let's go to the back third of the palate. As I've often said, the back third of your palate will give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get the sort of rye bread in the base, the wholemeal brown bread above that, then the sort of chocolate sponge cakey notes, and then a wee bit more of that chocolate brownie. Yeah, you get a wee bit more of the kind of chocolate brownie and Christmas puddingy type notes coming out of it, like I said. So yeah, and the back third of your palate, you can feel the basis, of course, that smooth American oak. It feels a little bit dry. You've got the bourbon layer in there as well, slightly more toasty almost. But then yeah, you've got the roasty well-fired bread crust, which feels a little bit drier, the rye bready layer, which feels a little bit taller, lighter and more airy and a wee bit more oily. Then above that, the wholemeal brown bready layer, which again feels a little bit lighter, taller and more airy, but still drier. Then yeah, chocolate sponge, and then just a wee bit of the just a little bit of the Christmas pudding, and the a little bit of the Christmas pudding and the kind of chocolate brownie there, and you can feel some of the drier aspects of the brown sugar just creeping over on top of all that. You get the nice kind of leathery brown sugar in there, and a bit of the treacle molasses just creeping over the top. Then of course at the top of that back third of your palate, it's all about the yeasty side of things. So let's have a little look at that yeasty side of the beer then. So yeah, for me, the yeasty side of the beer, it's almost a little bit hard to detect because of the intensity of the blueberries in this one. But yeah, you've got a kind of dense Christmas puddingy sort of note in the middle of that kind of brandy sherry soaked Christmas pudding, and around the edge of that there's a little bit of a rye bready character, then a slightly toasty well-fired bread crust in there. So yeah, all of that sits on top of the back third of the palate, and definitely you can feel the back third of your palate is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down a little bit and squashes together. So yeah, that's interesting for this one. On the hoppy side of things then, for the green component, there's not too much to report in this one. You do actually get a little bit of a more intense earthiness in the back corners of your palate there. And as you move further forward, the earthiness mellows out a little bit and you get a little touch of herbal quality, and you can feel as you reach the front corners of your palate, it's a little bit more floral and aromatic, and then round the front curve of the tongue, it's just that little bit lighter and grassy. There's a wee bit of an almost kind of zestiness to the grassiness as well, which I find quite interesting. So yeah, let's look at the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things, just to round off the flavour section of this beer. So, for me, the backbone of the front third of your palate with this beer, you get the nice kind of smooth American oak, and it's got a wee bit more vanilla to it. You get the sweeter side of the bourbon layer as well, toasty well-fired bread crust, the rye bread, the wholemeal brown bread, and then the kind of chocolate spongy characters sitting above that. But yeah, the border region between front and middle third of your palate in there, you get, yeah, the rye bread and the base, the brown bread on top of that, then the kind of chocolate sponge and a wee touch of a more dry chocolate brownie there. But yeah, that's the kind of base stuff of what's going on in the front third of your palate. And yeah, you can feel a little touch of the leathery brown sugar just on top of those bready characters I was talking about. But then yeah, you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer from the hops. So let's look at that. And of course you've got the blueberries in this one as well. And whenever you add beer, whenever you add fruit into fruit as an adjunct into beer, come on brain, it suppresses a little bit of the hoppy side of the beer. So let's just look at that. So yeah, on the oily fruity bubble that you get out of this beer at the back, you get some nice juicy plums. Underneath that you get a little bit of dry prune. In the base there's quite a little bit of datey character going on. As you move further forward you get a little bit of sultana, a little bit of oily pear, quite dry as well. And then as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, it's all about the kind of wet, oily figgy character as well. So yeah, as you move further forward from that into the front half of the front third of your tongue, yeah, black currants in the base, blackberry in there, and then yeah, the way that goes together I think is really nice actually. So yeah, on top of that you can feel the blueberries just coming in and kind of saturating that, and the blueberry character lingers into the aftertaste and it just spreads around the front kind of sides of your palate as well. So yeah, this one really does go together very, very nicely. I mean, breakfast stouts that I've had from European breweries before tend to have a little bit of coffee in them and give you that little bit of buzz. This is very much like a breakfast pastry stout almost, you could probably say that, although it's not, you know, pastry stouts, I don't like that kind of granola and marzipan flavour that these guys can have. It's more like an Imperial breakfast sweet stout maybe is a better way to describe this one. But you know, we can argue about styles and sub-styles all day. The question should always be, is it a good beer? And I would say yes, this is a very nice one, but do share this with somebody because, you know, the booze is going to get to your head, I can feel that already, and it is very sweet as well. So yeah, it's quite brave to drink one of these yourself if you're going to do it. But let's round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, the beer is definitely full-bodied. Carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. It has this big sort of dry, smooth silkiness. I don't know if I'd go as far as describing this one as creamy, even though it has the lactose in it. But yeah, it's not far away from that. Yeah, I think big oily slickness from this one is fair enough. The malty side of the beer in the barrel, of course, you've got the dryness underneath, the sweetness of the bourbon layer, the smoothness of the bready sort of cakey layers in there, the dry sweetness that comes out of those as well. Big intense brown sugars, both from the malt and from the maple syrup that's in here, and they linger into the aftertaste too. You've got a little bit of sharpness to this one on the impact from the addition of the blueberries, but it becomes very, very juicy. I do think the blueberries in this one are probably flavour essence, just because of the intensity of the flavour that you get from them. The American blueberries could be different from the European and Scottish ones, of course. I might well be wrong on that, but just the intensity and the kind of candied nature of the flavour makes me think flavour essence. But yeah, I think that covers the malty side of it. The fruity side, as we said, is really nice, big and oily, and then yeah, you've got the blueberries on top of that, and just a little bit of hoppy bitterness out of this one as well. I mean, maybe this beer is like 20 or 30 IBUs, something like that. The focus is most definitely on the sweetness and the smoothness with this one. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that. This has been a really, really nice beer to try, and definitely a very good one to do for my first solo brewery beer review from Bottle Logic Brewing. So yeah, this was the 2021 vintage of More Time to Explain, a 12.43% Imperial Breakfast Stout brewed with lactose, aged in bourbon barrels, and then finished with blueberries and maple syrup. Really nice beer, this one, and I am going to go away now and enjoy the rest of it, but it's gone up here. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Bottle Logic Brewing as well, and we will see about returning to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, Sláinte, Skål, cheers, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys in another review very, very shortly. Ciao just now.